in the vast, unforgiving expanse of the Old West, where survival was a daily battle and trust was a rare currency. One man's hardened heart was about to face a test unlike any other. Imagine a lone rancher, rugged and proud, living by a code carved from years of hardship, his land, his rules, and his unwillingness to bend for anyone, especially a starving Indian at his doorstep. The silence that followed his refusal was heavier than the endless prairie winds, a weight that pressed not only on the desperate figure, but on the very soul of a land steeped in conflict and prejudice. But fate, as relentless as the desert sun, had a different plan, one that would unravel the layers of bitterness and pride with a single phone call that no one could have foreseen. The president himself, a man commanding the nation's highest office, uttered words that transformed the rancher's world forever, calling him his old mentor, a title carrying a lifetime of untold stories, lessons, and a bond invisible to the naked eye. How could this man, so distant from power and prestige, hold such sway over a president's heart and conscience? This story is not just about refusal or hunger. It's about the tangled threads of loyalty, honor, and unexpected humanity in a time when those values were constantly tested. It is a tale that challenges the harsh judgments we make, showing us that even in the harshest deserts of the West, compassion can emerge from the most unlikely places. What led to this profound revelation? And how did a simple act of denial turn into a moment of grace that changed lives forever? Stay with us as we peel back the layers of this extraordinary encounter, a moment frozen in time that teaches us about forgiveness, respect, and the invisible ties that bind us all, no matter the odds. You'll witness the clash between survival instincts and moral reckoning, and perhaps find echoes of your own struggles in a story carved out of dust, determination, and destiny. The story begins in a remote corner of the rugged frontier, where the harsh sun beats down on dusty trails and survival depends on grit and sheer will. The rancher, an emblem of strength forged through years of taming the wild land, was known far and wide for his unforgiving nature. To him, charity was a luxury he could not afford. Every grain of feed was precious, earned by sweat and blood. So, when a starving Native American man, gaunt and desperate, approached his ranch asking for food, the rancher's answer was cold and absolute. No. This refusal wasn't born of mere cruelty. It was a shield forged from old wounds and scars carried silently through decades of bitter conflict between settlers and indigenous people. The rancher had seen too many betrayals, too many broken promises. To him, this starving man was not just a stranger asking for help. It was a symbol of a world that challenged everything he had fought to build. His denial echoed across the barren plains like a thunderclap, sealing the fate of the desperate soul standing on the edge of survival. But the winds of the West have a way of shifting unpredictably, carrying whispers of fate where least expected. That night, beneath a blanket of stars that seemed endless, the rancher sat by his fire wrestling with a growing unease. The image of the starving man haunted his thoughts, not just the man, but what he represented: a broken past, a tangled history of mistrust, and a deep, aching loneliness that mirrored his own. In this silent struggle between pride and humanity, the frontier held its breath. Meanwhile, miles away in a grand office filled with heavy curtains and the weight of the nation's destiny, the president was wrestling with his own demons. He knew the man he was about to call held a history far beyond the glitz of political power, a man who had shaped him in ways few could understand. The connection between the leader of a nation and a humble rancher was a secret thread woven through time, filled with lessons of strength, resilience, and respect for a land harsh but honest. When the president's voice finally broke the stillness over the phone line, it carried more than just words. It carried the power to transform, to bridge divides, and to awaken the dormant humanity in a man hardened by the frontier's unforgiving grip. Calling the rancher his old mentor wasn't just a title. It was a key that unlocked a forgotten door, inviting the rancher to step into a story far bigger than himself. Back at the ranch, the phone call landed like a lightning strike, shattering the rancher's stoic facade. The name Old Mentor echoed in his mind, stirring memories long buried under layers of dust and time. Memories of a younger man, before the West had worn him down, a time when he had guided a young boy, teaching him the rugged ways of the frontier, instilling in him values that would shape a future president. This connection was invisible to the world, but it was as real and powerful as the sun setting over endless plains. The rancher's heart, so tightly wrapped in years of solitude and self-reliance, began to unravel. He realized that the man starving at his door was not just a figure of conflict, but a reminder of something deeper, of the debts we owe to one another, beyond skin, tribe, or title. In the harsh world of the Old West, survival often meant turning away from vulnerability, but the president's words dared him to remember a different truth, that mentorship, honor, and compassion could survive even in the wildest frontier. Compelled by this awakening, the rancher set out to find the starving man again, walking the dusty trails with a weight on his shoulders and hope in his heart. The landscape seemed different now, less a battlefield and more a canvas for redemption. Every step he took was heavy with the knowledge that sometimes the greatest battles are fought not with guns, but with courage to change, to forgive, and to extend a hand when it matters most. When the rancher finally found the starving man, the scene was raw and unvarnished. Hollow eyes, trembling hands, a fragile figure on the brink of giving up. But in that moment, the rancher saw beyond the surface and into the shared humanity that binds all souls. The grain offered was not just food. It was a bridge between worlds, a quiet act of grace that defied the harsh codes of the frontier and honored the invisible ties that connect mentor and student, man and man. This act didn't erase the past, nor did it promise an easy future, but it sparked a change, a flicker of hope in a landscape often defined by struggle and division. The rancher's journey from refusal to compassion became a legend whispered around campfires, reminding all who heard it that sometimes the toughest hearts hold the capacity for the deepest kindness, especially when reminded of the ties that bind us across time and circumstance. The news of the rancher's unexpected kindness spread slowly across the frontier, carried by travelers, traders, and the flickering campfires where stories breathed life into the night. Many who knew the rancher found it hard to reconcile the hardened man they respected with the image of a man who had chosen mercy over pride. But those who understood the true grit of the West knew this act was not weakness. It was the quiet strength of a soul reclaimed by its own humanity. In the days that followed, the starving man began to regain his strength, nourished not only by the food, but by a fragile sense of dignity restored. He became a living symbol of resilience, a testament to the idea that even in the harshest places, kindness could flourish like wildflowers breaking through cracked earth. The rancher watched this transformation with a guarded hope, realizing that the land he had fought so hard to protect was not just soil and stone. It was a place where second chances could take root. Yet, the shadow of history lingered. The wounds between settlers and indigenous people ran deep, carved into the land as surely as the canyons and rivers. The rancher knew this act of compassion was but a single ripple in a vast ocean of pain and mistrust. But it was a ripple that mattered, a moment where the unyielding codes of the Old West bowed to something greater, a shared recognition of life's fragile value. The president, aware of the impact his words had set in motion, saw in this story the heart of a nation struggling to reconcile its past. He knew that true leadership was not just about laws and orders, but about inspiring courage in unexpected places. By calling the rancher his mentor, he had reminded the man, and the world, that the roots of greatness often lie in humble, unseen moments of grace. This narrative, forged in dust and hardship, challenges us today to look beyond division and see the threads of connection woven through our history. It invites us to ask, what acts of mercy, however small, can break the cycle of bitterness? How can we honor the lessons of those who walked before us, who faced impossible choices yet chose to rise above? In the silence that followed the rancher's gesture, a transformation quietly took hold, not just in the starving man, but in the community that watched this story unfold. Neighbors who once eyed each other with suspicion began to murmur about the meaning behind this act. Conversations sparked around worn tables and dusty saloons, where men shared more than whiskey. They shared the hope that kindness could change the course of their rugged world. The rancher himself felt the stirring of change deep within his chest, a feeling he had long buried beneath years of stoic endurance. The frontier had shaped him into a man who believed in strength through solitude. Yet now he saw that true strength might lie in vulnerability, the courage to open one's heart despite the scars of past battles. This was a lesson taught not by gunfire or hard labor, but by a simple phone call and the quiet dignity of a starving man's plea. As days turned into weeks, the bond between the rancher and the starving man grew, a fragile but real testament to the possibility of healing. They shared stories beneath the endless sky, stories of hardship, loss, and the dreams that had carried them through barren times. In these moments, the vastness of the West seemed less like a desert of isolation and more like a landscape rich with possibility. Yet, the rancher knew that the road ahead was not without its challenges. The ghosts of the past lingered like shadows at dusk, reminding him that forgiveness and trust are battles fought over a lifetime. But for the first time, he faced these ghosts not with anger or fear, but with a newfound resolve to rewrite a story long told in pain and division. The president watched these changes unfold from afar, knowing that his call had done more than reconnect old friends. It had sparked a spark of hope in a land that desperately needed it. This story, carved from the rugged fabric of the Old West, speaks to the power of mentorship, honor, and the enduring human spirit to overcome even the harshest of beginnings. The rancher's decision to feed the starving man did not go unnoticed by those who held sway in the surrounding territories. Whispers of this unlikely act of mercy reached ears both friendly and hostile. Among the settlers, some saw it as a betrayal of their hard-earned dominance over a land they had conquered with blood and sweat. But others understood that beneath the dusty veil of the Old West lay a deeper truth, that survival was not just about guns and land, but about recognizing the humanity in even the most unexpected places. The starving man, once seen as a shadow fading into the background, began to reclaim his dignity piece by piece. His presence at the ranch became a symbol of endurance, a living testament that the spirit could persevere even after the darkest nights. His eyes, once hollow with despair, now carried a quiet fire, a resilience that inspired those who witnessed his slow but steady rise. Yet the road to acceptance was steep and fraught with tension. The scars of history ran deep, and prejudice was as much a part of the landscape as the jagged rocks and endless plains. The rancher, hardened by years of conflict, struggled to reconcile his past with this new path. But beneath his gruff exterior, a shift was occurring, a dawning realization that mercy was not a weakness, but a strength that could reshape even the wildest frontier. The president, ever mindful of the nation's fractured soul, saw in this story a microcosm of a greater battle, the struggle to heal wounds that stretched across generations. By calling the rancher his old mentor, he reminded the world that leadership was built on more than power. It was built on the bonds forged through sacrifice, guidance, and unexpected compassion. As the sun set over the horizon, painting the sky with hues of fire and gold, the rancher and the starving man stood side by side, two figures bound by a shared history and a fragile hope for the future. Their story, whispered on the wind, became a beacon for those willing to believe that even in the harshest of lands, humanity could prevail. Life on the ranch began to change in subtle but profound ways. The once rigid walls that separated people by tribe and bloodline started to crumble, replaced by cautious friendships and shared moments beneath the vast, unending sky. The starving man, now nourished in body and spirit, worked alongside the rancher, their bond growing stronger with each passing day. This partnership was more than practical. It was symbolic. It challenged the old narratives of division and hostility, showing that respect and trust could be earned across the deepest divides. The community watched with a mixture of skepticism and awe as two men from vastly different worlds forged a connection that neither violence nor prejudice could sever. But change, as always in the Old West, attracted both allies and adversaries. Not everyone was ready to embrace this new chapter. Some clung to the old ways, fueled by fear and misunderstanding, threatening to unravel the fragile peace. The rancher found himself at a crossroads, to protect what he had built or to stand firmly for the new values that had begun to take root in his heart. Through it all, the president's voice remained a quiet but steady presence, a reminder of the greater purpose that bound these lives together. His call had sparked more than a reunion. It had ignited a movement toward reconciliation and hope, a testament to the power of mentorship that transcends status and circumstance. In the end, the story of a rancher who once refused to feed a starving man became a legend, not just of the Old West, but of the enduring human spirit, a story that reminds us all that sometimes the greatest courage lies in opening our hearts when the world expects us to close them. As the seasons changed, the rancher and the starving man became inseparable, their lives intertwined like the roots of the ancient oaks scattered across the plains. Their shared hardships forged a bond stronger than mere friendship, a brotherhood born from respect and the quiet understanding of suffering and survival. In their union, the old wounds of prejudice began to heal, replaced by stories of hope whispered beneath the vast, starlit skies. The community began to shift as well, slowly shedding its layers of suspicion and fear. Neighbors who once avoided the starving man now greeted him with nods of recognition. Children, unburdened by the grudges of their elders, played freely near the ranch, unaware of the battles that had shaped the land they called home. This subtle transformation was a testament to the power of small acts, a shared meal, a kind word, a look of acceptance. Yet, the frontier remained a place where danger lurked just beyond the horizon. Bandits, harsh weather, and the unforgiving terrain reminded all that peace was fragile and must be fiercely protected. The rancher, once a man ruled by rigid codes of survival, found himself embracing a new code, one where compassion was as vital as courage, and where protecting others meant more than defending land. The president, watching from afar, understood that this story was a lesson far beyond the boundaries of the West. It was a reminder to the nation that the future depended on healing past divisions and embracing the strength found in unity. His call to the rancher had sparked a change, but it was the choices made in the dust and quiet moments that truly shaped the path forward. This tale, carved from the rough hands of the frontier, reminds us that even in the wildest lands, hearts can change. It shows us that mentorship, respect, and kindness are not just words, but powerful forces capable of rewriting the harshest histories. One crisp morning, as the sun spilled golden light over the rolling hills, a messenger arrived with news that would shake the quiet ranch to its core. The president, moved by the stories unfolding far from the capital, had sent a letter, an invitation for the rancher and his once starving companion to visit the White House. It was a gesture heavy with meaning, a recognition of a bond that transcended geography and status. For the rancher, this invitation was a moment of reckoning. The man who had once closed his door to a starving stranger was now called to stand beside the leader of a nation, a testament to the unexpected journeys life can take when pride gives way to grace. The weight of the past mingled with the hope of the future as he prepared to leave the only home he had ever known. The starving man, now a symbol of survival and redemption, understood the significance of the trip. It was not just a physical journey, but a passage from the margins to the center, a testament to the power of human dignity. Together, they set out on a path that would bring their story to a wider audience, challenging hearts and minds far beyond the frontier. Their arrival in the nation's capital was met with quiet awe and deep respect. Stories of the West, once filled with conflict and hardship, now carried a message of hope and reconciliation. The rancher, once a man of solitude and skepticism, stood proudly as the president introduced him as more than a mentor, as a symbol of a nation's capacity to heal. This chapter of their journey reminds us all that history is shaped not only by great battles and grand speeches, but by the courage to forgive, to change, and to extend kindness when it matters most. At the White House, the rancher and the man who had once been starving stood side by side, their presence a silent testament to a story few believed possible. The president, with genuine warmth, recounted the years behind the title Old Mentor. Stories of lessons taught on dusty trails, of resilience forged through hardship, and of a bond that transcended time and circumstance. The room listened in rapt silence, feeling the weight of a history marked by struggle, but uplifted by unexpected compassion. In that grand hall, the rancher realized that the frontier's harshness had prepared him for this moment, not with weapons or grit alone, but with the wisdom to see beyond division. His refusal to feed that starving man was once a line drawn in dust, but now it was a part of a larger story about growth, forgiveness, and the power of human connection. The president's words had unlocked a door, but it was the rancher's own heart that had walked through it. The man who had been starving, now dignified and strong, stood as a living proof that mercy could transform lives. His journey from desperation to respect was a mirror reflecting the nation's own path, from conflict to reconciliation, from mistrust to hope. Their story challenged every listener to reconsider the narratives they held about the West, about each other, and about the power of second chances. Outside, the bustling city seemed a world away from the wide-open plains where their journey had begun. Yet, in the faces of those who heard their story, the spirit of the frontier lived on, not in rugged survival alone, but in courage to change and to embrace the humanity in others. The rancher's legacy had grown far beyond the fences of his land, inspiring a nation to believe in redemption. This chapter teaches us that mentorship is not just about teaching skills, but about shaping hearts. It reminds us that even the most stubborn souls can be softened by recognition and respect. And most importantly, it reveals that the most profound transformations often begin with a single, courageous act. Returning home, the rancher carried with him more than memories of his visit to the capital. He carried a renewed sense of purpose. The land he had fought to protect was now a symbol of hope, a place where old wounds could heal under the endless sky. His heart, once guarded by walls of pride and suspicion, was open to the possibilities of kindness and change. The starving man, now a partner and brother in all but blood, worked alongside the rancher not just to sustain life, but to build a future. Together, they nurtured not only crops and cattle, but trust and understanding within a community once divided. Their story became a legend told and retold, a beacon that called others to see beyond old grudges and fear. Though the frontier remained wild and unpredictable, it was no longer a place defined solely by hardship. It had become a land where compassion could thrive, where mentorship extended beyond knowledge to the healing of souls. The rancher's journey from refusal to acceptance echoed through canyons and rivers, carried by the wind to every corner of the West. As the sun dipped below the horizon, casting long shadows across the plains, the rancher and his once starving companion sat together in quiet reflection. Their story was far from over, but the chapters they had written stood as proof that even in the harshest lands, humanity could find a way to prevail. This final part of their journey reminds us all that history is shaped by the choices we make. In moments of challenge, in acts of courage, and in the willingness to see one another as brothers, regardless of the past. As the dust settles on this remarkable tale from the Old West, we are left with more than just a story of survival and hardship. It is a testament to the transformative power of compassion, a reminder that even the most hardened hearts can change when touched by recognition and kindness. The journey of the rancher and the starving man teaches us that no matter how vast the divides may seem, the bonds forged through respect and humanity are stronger than any barrier. Their story urges us to reflect on our own lives and communities. How often do we turn away from those in need, caught between pride and fear? What could happen if, like the rancher, we found the courage to look beyond the surface and see the shared struggles that connect us all? In a world that often rewards toughness, this tale challenges us to redefine strength, not as cold endurance, but as the bravery to open our hearts to others. This legend from the frontier stands as a beacon of hope for anyone feeling isolated or broken. It tells us that second chances are possible, that forgiveness can heal wounds that seem permanent, and that mentorship goes beyond teaching skills. It is about guiding one another toward better versions of ourselves. The Old West may be a distant time, but its lessons resonate today, inviting us to build bridges where there once were walls. As you carry this story with you, remember that every act of kindness creates ripples far beyond what we can see. Whether small or grand, these moments of grace shape not only others' lives, but our own souls. In the spirit of the rancher's transformation, let us dare to become mentors in compassion, courage, and understanding in our own worlds. If this story moved you, take a moment to join our community by subscribing to the channel. Like the video if it touched your heart, and share your thoughts in the comments, because your voice matters in keeping these stories alive. Together, we can explore more tales that remind us of our shared humanity and inspire us to face life's challenges with courage and empathy.